So everyone, Arrow Season 8 Episode 4. Now, after the cliffhanger of last week's episode, it was just insane. I think we can all agree with that. And this episode, it definitely introduced very interesting things. It should go without saying, because now we have the new future Team Arrow in present day. I guess why that's called, that's why the episode's called present tense. Now, this episode was good, and I have to admit, like, I was hoping that this, the new Team Arrow being in present day would make me enjoy them a lot more, and it has, I think, for William for the most part, and Connor Hawke even. I loved what they did with those characters with their respective parents, like Oliver Queen and obviously Diggle. But Mia was being Mia this episode, of course. And some of it didn't really make sense. It was just Mia being Mia, I think. Some of you may agree, some of you may not agree, but I think we kind of the majority of people understand where I'm coming from with that. But just in general, there were so many things that happened in this episode, or just so many things you can go over. I don't think I can get through it all unless I freaking speak for like half an hour. And I guess this episode was also setting up the Star City Canaries, or should I say the Green Arrow and the Canaries show. I'm not saying this was the backdoor pilot, by the way. I'm just saying this is kind of gave even more nods and teasers to that backdoor pilot dedicated episode we'll actually be getting for the Green Arrow and the Canaries show. And who knows if that's going to be a title. But before I get into this review, guys, if you haven't seen my Flash review, I will leave it in the cards above. As always, I uploaded it a few hours ago. And of course, everyone subscribe for more Arrow videos like this. So instantly, this episode started off where we left off, last week, and it was just crazy. We had William crying his eyes out. We had Connor Hawke saying, "Dad, you're so young." We had Oliver looking like he was actually going to black out. I've just been dying to see this reaction, and I think the most compelling thing of this episode is Oliver Queen. Stephen Amell's acting. I felt like his heart was getting broken several times, especially with the things he was learning. That he was saying, oh, at least you two got to meet each other and stuff like that, and grow up together. And then William's just like, actually, we kind of only just met each other. It was just like a whole collection of things that I felt really bad for Oliver, because he, at least through knowing that he's going to die, wanted some kind of security for his family. Obviously, the bottom line for him is making sure his family's safe, but obviously when you're going to go out swinging with the Anti-Monitor or something like that, you want to imagine you've left the world in a better place. Not only does he save the universe, arguably, who knows exactly how it's going to go down, but that's the gist that we've got, but you want to kind of think in that post-universe, things are going to not exactly be rainbows, but probably good, because why wouldn't they be? But yeah, his heart kept getting crushed and crushed and crushed, and to be honest, throughout this whole episode, I felt sorry for him because of the Mia comments that I was saying a second ago, but also because what I was just talking about with him more or less continuously being let down along the way each and every point throughout the episode. But he wasn't the only one, because obviously the new Team Arrow, should I say the future Team Arrow, were contemplating whether they should even tell present day Team Arrow about everything that goes down. Like, another thing that really kind of pulled my emotional strings was right at the beginning of the episode when Renee was saying, yeah, but like, why didn't the Monitor bring Zoe back? And I was like, oh man. And I was also very interested to just focus on what could the effects of the time travel be. We had a moment when Oliver wanted to call Felicity, and then obviously that's not going to happen because Felicity isn't coming back until probably the last episode, and I didn't talk about that, but by the way, Emily Bett Rickards is coming back, but that's not a massive surprise. But he did say, I don't know how all of this time travel stuff or rules work or whatever he said, but like, I kind of wanted a bit more into that, because if anything, the Arrowverse have gone back and forth on how important it is to not mess with this stuff, and then the next second they kind of drop it. And in this episode, it's like, Jesus, like, how many potential repercussions and things are they also abandoning at the same time with the dangers of time travel? And it's just crazy to even fathom, but I've kind of dropped it a little bit. Just because of how unique and crazy this pre-crisis storyline is. But yeah, it should go without saying, without going over this again and again, because there was quite a lot of this at the beginning. I absolutely loved Oliver and his son William catching up. Those two were just great on screen together. I believe, yeah, they obviously haven't shared any scenes before. So all of that stuff in this episode, I really enjoyed. I kind of wrote down in my bullet points, this was kind of like or maybe one of, if not, maybe next week's episode will be like it was kind of like a normal Arrow episode, except it really wasn't, because I say normal with the fact that Oliver Queen's back, Team Arrow is there, we're kind of dealing with a present day problem in Star City, but obviously the kids from the future are here, so that's how it isn't in a very big difference. But it was kind of nice. It was kind of nice going back to Oliver Queen in present day, because, you know, going into this season, I'm sure like a lot of us just had this vision of Oliver hopping and skipping ropes around the multiverse, doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and they have been doing that towards the beginning of this season, but now it's kind of gone back to, whilst maintaining that importance, especially with that ending with Marnovu, the Monitor, and obviously Laurel, it's also not completely abandoning the kind of Arrow vibe we're used to having in every previous season. So I don't think I'm wrong in saying this unless I completely missed something. I thought JJ going into this was going to be teleported back to present day, just because, you know, Marnovu is kind of like, you know, evidently kind of screwing stuff up with a bit of his chaos ingredients that he likes to do. But it turns out that the Deathstroke gang was led by Grant Wilson, which, you know, definitely lines up to what we've seen beforehand. Not that anyone should pay attention to the whole Legendsy kind of stuff from years ago, because it's not going to happen that way. I mean, obviously. But this moment was interesting because this led to the new Team Arrow kind of going after the Deathstroke gang, because they obviously know all of this kind of stuff from the future, and that gave them the reveal of Grant Wilson, and they were very confused because, you know, Connor was showing out JJ, Team Arrow burst in, and they were just like, hey, why are you saying JJ if it's Grant? And then this led to that whole big reveal. I just feel like it's one thing off. This is what I mean. There's so many freaking things in this episode, and I'm glad that this didn't get put on the back burner, because I actually thought that they might not have said as much as they were going to, just because of the whole time stuff, but they went full on out. Like, Renee found out that Zoe dies, they found out that JJ, you know, becomes evil and kills Zoe. Like, all of this was just absolutely crazy, and I'm, as I said, it's very good that it's out, because I think this is obviously a byproduct of we having to accelerate throughout the storyline. Otherwise, if they just did drag this out, it would have felt like a bit more of a normal Arrow season. I'm glad that the foot was on the gas, because it made it a lot more entertaining, especially with that Renee scene and Diggle scene when they were kind of like shouting at each other. I just felt like both of their emotions there. Like, Diggle was, you know, saying that how shook he is, and this just led to a whole bunch of fallout in different areas. But ultimately, this panned out in the episode with this kind of philosophy from Dinah going around being the kind of middleman, saying that what happened can either destroy us or save us. So now it's kind of fully fledged, let's change the future. Then we also had Curtis returning this episode, and mainly, apart from just helping out Team Arrow, he was given his own little task from Oliver to look into this piece of fabric, which I believe he said was touched by the antimatter. I mean, he didn't say what it was. That was the whole point of investigating into what this is, but I believe it is obviously the antimatter. That's what it was touched by, because he believes it has the power to kill a god, and he's all about stopping Marnovu at the minute, because he thinks what he learned last episode was all purely about the Monitor, who is shady as heck. What we've already known that, and the ending just emphasizes that. But I think he is, just like a lot of you already know, is putting the blame on the Monitor when really it is the anti-Monitor. But he hasn't really fully been explained about that whole situation by Marnovu, because in that book last episode, you know, he had a wrinkly face and everything. And if you guys know what the anti-Monitor looks like from that official promo shot, that resembles purely the anti-Monitor. So I'm guessing Oliver wants to kind of create, we had like the freaking Arrow of Destiny in the Elseworlds crossover, or whatever that was, but I'm wondering if after, you know, what happened with what Curtis said, and how he's gonna have to get plutonium or whatever it was to kind of recreate this antimatter, it makes me think, is he really going to create an antimatter Arrow? I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen, I'm just saying, imagine if it's a similar thing to Elseworlds, and that's how he's going to go out swinging, by kind of like releasing an antimatter Arrow into the anti-Monitor, and that's how, I mean, I think that's way too simple, but we're going to have to wait and see. But it's going to be interesting that Oliver, kind of in a very, you know, calculated vigilante way, is going to have, you know, already some source and way of protecting himself against these cosmic godlike beings like the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor. I think that will really surprise Marnovu. One kind of issue I have is that he's meant to be like borderline omniscient, but he doesn't seem to be aware of all that's happening, all of what Oliver is looking into, all of last episode. All he has to do is like appear, and like look at him for the woods and I don't know, do you know what I mean? Like see what he was doing last episode with Thea and everything like that. Maybe he already does know. Maybe we're gonna get that reveal saying, Oliver, I know what you've been doing this whole time. I don't know. So in terms of the Grant Wilson stuff, luckily new Team Arrow and the old Team Arrow were able to stop that. We had JJ disabling, not JJ, freaking Connor Hawk disabling the bomb. We had a whole bunch of drama going on between Mia and Oliver because Mia wanted to kill Grant Wilson so it would save Zoe. And this is, I just liked all of the stuff that Oliver was trying to do this episode with Mia. As annoying as Mia I felt was, he was trying to instill all of this wisdom that he's made from his own mistakes that he's just seeing in this younger version of him almost. Like in that scene when he didn't even want her to leave the bunker, and it almost came to the point when they exchanged blows, and this just kind of irritated me. Like this scene in particular though, just from Mia's end, saying how Oliver essentially doesn't get a say because he left her with, Mum in the cabin, and it's just like, duh. Like if he didn't, he wouldn't have been able to save the whole universe, or at least that's what we kind of know about what he does and sacrifices himself. So it's like, what are you on about? Just shut up. As Oliver said, I chose to keep you safe and I chose right. But I don't know. It's just Mia acting like Mia. I know why they did it, because this is her character, so they're maintaining that, especially in the present day, if you will, but it doesn't mean I have to like it. It doesn't mean that probably a lot of people don't like it, as they haven't done already. But with Grant Wilson now going to Blackgate in Gotham, and they're going to keep an extremely close eye on him, it does make me think how, as I said earlier, how different will things be now? Does this mean that he won't train JJ? I really don't think so. I mean, that would be way too simple, as I mentioned, so let me know what you think about that down in the comments below, because if Grant Wilson's in prison now, surely he won't train JJ. But obviously they also mentioned how Grant always escapes, despite Laurel saying we're going to keep a close eye on him. I don't know. This is the kind of mind-boggling stuff which we still have yet to fully understand, because there isn't a whole bunch of clarity into how much, this will affect the future right now. But there is a bunch of stuff that we do know that they want to put into swing. For example, the bunch of Canary references we got in this episode, with near the ending, Dinah being like, oh, the Canary Network isn't a bad idea though, and Laurel being like, well, let's just do the good stuff. So Renee's still going to go on to be mayor, they're still going to set up the Canaries, Zoe's still going to get trained, but then they just threw like a spanner in the works in terms of Laurel, and I don't know how and why this is even going to fit into the storyline, but that's when the Monitor appears and says, you ache for the world that you lost and I possess the power to restore it. The recovery of your universe will require a single task. You must betray Oliver Queen. And so either he's lying, and I know he is insanely powerful, but if he could just, literally restore these universes, then the Anti-Monitor, I know he said he's more powerful than him, but surely he can just flick his hand and restore Earth 90 and all of these other Earths that have already been destroyed, Earth 2, but no, the Monitor seems to be a bit of a beep, so I don't know. But either way, why does he want Laurel to betray Oliver? It doesn't make sense. I've been trying to figure this one out. He's already hinted that Earth 2 was a necessary sacrifice to basically keep Oliver in line and focused on his mission to save the multiverse. So is this like another messed up thing where he thinks, oh, if you betray Oliver, that's another kind of necessary sacrifice in terms of how that'll mess a few things up. I can't wait to find out what the Monitor's real game is. I think there's going to be definitely a difference from the kind of the comic book adaptation. And no, I'm not saying he's the Anti-Monitor or anything like that, but it's definitely way too shady with the way this is coming across. I don't know, guys. I'm sorry this has been a bit of a rambly kind of review, kind of out of order and everything like that, because it's just so many things happened, and I don't really know how to feel about this episode, just because it was great in so many ways in terms of it gave us so many cool scenes, like, Diggle and his son Connor scenes, with how, they learned about the context behind JJ and how Connor Hawk started off bad, but he got straightened out, and just all of those kind of feelsy moments, even that scene with Renee and Dinah on the bench, when Zoe was there, all of that kind of stuff was really nice, and the acting was really on point, and it felt feelsy, even though I don't really have much of a connection to these future Team Arrow members, which surprised me. But I also thought that, doing this is a very bold move, even though it makes complete sense to the story. And what I'm saying is, introducing these future characters from 2040 in 2019, just because of how much, I read all of your comments. I know I've got a vibe and a feel for how people feel about Arrow's 2040 kind of characters, and it's just, it doesn't necessarily translate well for everyone. And I think Mia is the person I'm on about here, but that doesn't mean that I'm completely slating this, especially with the ending of this episode with Oliver kind of putting out an olive branch, which he's been trying to do all freaking episode, saying, you know, I can help you deal with your guilt. I'm just hoping that in episodes coming after this, she won't be kind of her typical self. I hope this means with her saying thank you and how she kind of seemed to chill out by the end of the episode, that she'll be a lot more tame. And this means that these new kind of Team Arrow members won't be as in your face and out of place in the present day scenes, and it will be nothing but the cool aspects that I took from this episode. But other than that, you know, it was a decent episode. I think this is just going to bridge the gap to the new kind of Arrow we're going to get from now on. Also, just in the terms of how last episode everything was separate with the present day scenes, the future scenes, and now this episode establishes a whole new dynamic, and I don't see how that's going to change now going forward. And I think, you know, we're going to kind of be stuck with those future Arrow characters, especially to the point where a lot of people have been theorizing that even those new Team Arrow members is going to turn into the Canary show, obviously with like Mia being stuck in the present, Laurel, Dinah, and that was probably the whole philosophy behind, you know, changing the future. That's why they're going to stay in the present. It's going to be kind of like a consistent battle to save Star City. I mean, that's what I'm guessing. I don't see why it would be anything different, because I don't think even before Crisis or after Crisis that stuff will be purely changed. It's going to be an ongoing effort that the Canaries and everything else being set up, including, who knows, Renee might appear in it and stuff like other characters like that, because why not? It's just going to be kind of about that and that effort to move forward with making sure that Star City that we saw last season doesn't come to fruition. Let's really start a conversation down in the comments below. I would really like to hear your theories about that antimatter and what Oliver could do with it. Will he weaponize it into an arrow like in Elseworlds? Be sure to check out my past couple of videos here. One of them is my flash review from last night, but that is everything. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you vigilantes in the next video. Goodbye.